Wonderful. So I wanted to start because Cam and Jenna and I were actually talking about how we wanted to do this the other day. And we were talking about the idea of a TED Talk. And it made me think of this one I'd watched it was a few weeks ago from Amal Kassir, I believe. And she had talked about there's this importance in naming yourself before other people do. So that's, even though you guys all know me, that's what I kind of wanted to start with. So, hi, my name is Kendall, and I am a daughter, a sister, a friend, a student, and a coworker. I am an animal lover and ice cream fanatic, which is very funny that we talked about ice cream just 5 minutes ago. I am an avid reader, and right now I'm also sick. So something that I feel that I can now add to that is that I'm a social justice advocate, and it's because of everything I've learned through this program. Social justice work itself is more than I ever thought it was. You know, I had this idea in my head that social justice and to make change in that field is going out to protests and rallies. But being able to participate in this program has definitely shown me that it's a lot more than that. So I wanted to share a few of the things that stuck with me, and they kind of correlate to each speaker, but not really. So starting off with number one, activism comes in many forms, including relational. Through personal and behind the scenes action, you can make a change. Don't feel like you have to, you know, be running every which way and doing this and doing that. You know, there's so much that you can do just by interacting with people. And that to me was a big first lesson in this, because I'd always viewed it as this unattainable thing. So making it something that, you know, everyone can do in their daily life was something big for me, at least personally. And then number two, solid relationships start with a good relationship with yourself. So you have to realize that there is something worth living for far bigger than the now, which that was something I believe Alo had said, that I was stuck thinking about it for the next hour after we left that meeting, because I just, you know, you hear stuff like that all the time, but you don't really think about the implications of it until you're in that kind of context. So that was a very freeing moment too. Number three, your inner child deserves healing and a voice, and that adults cannot truly be free until children are free. Number four, control of and control over are hard dynamics. Nothing is ever the perfect or the right path, including parenting. So to learn, you have to make your mistakes, and that's just the way it is, which is something that I'm still learning to do. Where are we? 5, relational activism does work in real ways. And the biggest moment that I realized that was with Pam's presentation. Her whole foundation is built on relational activism and her just going out and connecting with people. And that was such a beautiful thing to see, the way that she makes these connections and makes what she sees needs to work. You know, like, there's a difference between knowing something as an idea and seeing it played out. And that was one of those moments where, hey, we had just learned about this, and now look, this woman can do it, you know? So that was an amazing part of this program too for me. Number 6, it's okay to be mad or upset about the world that was seemingly handed to us in indifference. But in effect, you have to use those emotions to drive your fight and will to change it. I had never thought about the way, you know, climate change and that kind of stuff interacts with me growing up, or with my probable, maybe possible future children. You know, that's one of those parts of social justice that you don't think about. And you hear time and time again, we need to do this, like the world is in danger, but it doesn't seem real until it's real, if that makes sense. 7, life is full of emotion, anger, sadness, regret, happiness, love, but you can't let the negative shape or take away from anything else. You have to use the positive parts of it to overcome. And then number 8, nothing ever goes the way you think it will. I came into this fellowship, and while I didn't really have like a idea of what I was expecting from it, this whole experience was nowhere near anything I could have imagined it being. I've learned many lessons. We've laughed and cried, and along the way, I've connected with an amazing group of people who, as we talked about in the least cliche way possible, all want to change the world for the better. That's so important to me, that there's people out there who still believe there is something good possible and who still see the good in little things every day. So I hope to keep that in my head and my heart, and to go out and find, 5 more people, and then 10 more, and then 20 more who all have that same ambition and drive and hope for this world. The beauty of this program is that it doesn't end here, but rather starts here. And at least for me, it's been an amazing learning experience, and I couldn't have asked for anything better with any better people. So with all that being said, I wanted to thank the facilitators and instructors and my fellow fellows. You all have shared beautiful and honest thoughts, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
So I'd like to kind of preface by saying I kind of went into this as social justice and education as sort of being secondary for me, as something that I've always like cared about, but it was never like, I guess like a priority. And so when my mentor sent me this opportunity, I was like, oh wow, like that's cool, like I really want to do that. So I kind of signed up, and I was like really excited, and I'm sure you guys know this by now, but like I want to go into the law, and I kind of want to fix kind of that aspect of that. But I'm really interested in how all these institutions work, how we got to where we are today, and most importantly, how to fix it and address the myriad of problems that we see today. And so like I grew up in poverty, and I always kind of knew the importance of education and how it correlates to so many things. You get an education, you are highly likely to get out. And I just remember like being on the bus with my mom as we were going to like community college, and I remember seeing everybody else going, and I was like, I don't know, I was just amazed by that. And so I feel as if kind of going into this, I kind of knew my why. But then I feel like it just opened up this huge can of worms for me. So in the simplest way possible, a thing that I learned was if you're not good, your work isn't going to be good. And to be a little more specific, if you don't know who you are, you can't really perform the best you can. And so understanding respect and who I am is complicated, and I don't think I'm there yet. But I think that is a huge part of our why. And I think that was something that I kind of had to step back and think, wow, I should probably figure that out. And so it's been really great to kind of like work on that. So this program has also taught me how to imagine a better world. I think a lot of times we can get tripped up in like, we want to do so much, but kind of feeling that we can't. And sort of the small things, like the small things are incredibly important. And it's very, very important to kind of step back and be like, I should be working on this. And there's like small steps, we can't change the world overnight as much as we'd love to. But we can do our best. And I think a big part of what I learned was that it challenged my beliefs. And I know I was kind of always vocal when something was like it just didn't necessarily sit right. So I think one of our presenters shared something about unschooling. And so naturally, like this kind of like alarm went off in my brain. And I was like what? Like, no. And so then like I left that session, and I realized it's like I'm being really judgmental. And so I kind of looked into it more, a lot more. And it was like a lot of people who did do the traditional unschooling were perfectly good, and they felt like it was really positive and they want to pass it on to their children, and they didn't struggle in school. And so it really was something that was so simple, but it just challenged like these like notions I had, like I always felt like, there are problems in the education system, but certain things should be there. And so kind of listening to like somebody speak about these power dynamics and how school is something that children have and should have control over, it was something that really challenged me for a bit. And I think that's one of those things where it stuck with me, and it really pushed me to be like, well, like, why do you think that? And so I think things like that were like really unique because they were things that I didn't even think about, like that I've never thought about. And I thought it was just so great to kind of hear these things and realize and kind of listen to myself and be like, okay, I'm pushing back. Why am I pushing back? And, and kind of assess that. And I think that was really great that I was able to kind of be like, okay, that's different, and kind of learn about it that way. And I think that was just something that was really huge for me. And then I guess learning what children need and concepts of adultism and childism. I'm not sure about everybody else, but I was not familiar with these terms, and it was just very foreign to me. And when things are foreign to people, you're going to be kind of resistant. And if you don't understand something, it's going to be a lot difficult to kind of tackle that. And so when I've worked with kids, I've that respect and acknowledging all of these feelings and emotions, it's very important. And this program has really like put the spotlight on like this power dynamic and the fact that there's just such a difference between children and adults, where we have to kind of acknowledge it and deal with that. And that was just something where I was like, wow, like I really need to think about that. Like we can't fix all these issues going through life, thinking that a lot of these things are normal. And, we want to empower children, and we want to empower adults, and we want it to be like this very great thing where these power dynamics cease to exist. And I think that was something where I just never thought about it, and how that is also an institution, and how all of these problems are systematic, and they're literally rooted in childhood. And so I think that was one of the biggest things that I was like, wow, like I didn't even think about this. And I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to sit here and learn it. And then I guess like one of the best things about this is that, I had a very safe and respectful environment. I think it's very important to kind of respect each other, and like feeling as though like these power dynamics, even between like the facilitators and the fellows, didn't exist. I think it was very, very beneficial. I think in any other environment where like I probably imagined this to go in, I think it would have been detrimental. I think being able to talk and, express all these things is just like really big. And so I am beyond appreciative that we are able to kind of sit here and talk and have it be like this back and forth, and not feel these off dynamics that would inhibit our abilities to convey how we feel, what we've learned, things like that. So I'm very beyond appreciative for all of that. And then so I'm excited to kind of take away from this and step back and kind of work in my community. And it really excites me for the future and everything that we can do. Like acknowledging these power structures that are way more complex than I even started to fathom. It's really big, and I'm very, very excited to kind of go on and work and figure this all out. And so this opportunity has been amazing. Best speakers, best fellows, best facilitators like ever. And I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful for all of that and everybody being here. So thank you guys.
Okay, so The other day, a girl in about 2nd or 3rd grade told me that she kept having certain bad memories come up. She asked me if those bad memories would change who she is and if they would affect her future. My heart just about broke for her, and yet I knew this moment was no accident and that she was asking me for a reason. I was her. And even though I didn't have the tools that I needed when I was her age, maybe I could share some of the things that I've learned along the way, and in the process help the broken parts of me still stuck at that age too. When I returned home from the Peace Corps in 2012, I experienced a family emergency that triggered the obsessive compulsive disorder I was diagnosed with at the age of 7 when I lost my best friend to cancer. During that onset, I felt unable to escape my intrusive thoughts and compulsive behaviors. Barely able to leave the house, I moved back in with my parents and my life froze. I had been an activist up until that point, born into a family of South Africans who immigrated in protest of apartheid. I was exposed to the world's injustices from a very early age, and for as long as I can remember, felt passionate about being a part of the solution. For example, in 1st grade, my teacher gave us an assignment to write about where we would like to go if we could go anywhere on vacation. I said I wanted to go to Somalia and feed the people and help them. My grandfather was the mayor of Johannesburg during the fall of apartheid. He taught me, amongst so many other things, that justice could be fought with love and that even the darkest parts of humanity could be met with a smile. When I was 20, my first boyfriend and I packed up to travel the world like nomads. We slept outside and dumpster dived for food. He was abusive in many ways I didn't see happening, and I lost every sense of myself. When I returned home, I was not the same person. But like Stephanie Mines said, voicing your truth is usually born out of your trauma history. I went to college and became an avid human rights activist and community organizer, working with the likes of Amnesty International, the Coalition Against Sexual Violence, and the Office of Sexual Assault Prevention. One event I organized eventually led me to Kenya, where I got involved in post-election violence trauma healing work before I joined the Peace Corps in Uganda. And that's where I started a small nonprofit aimed at supporting the healing of former child soldier and sex-trafficked orphan girls through education and economic empowerment. I didn't want any other girl to feel the way that I did, and that has been so much of the source of my why. After returning, I experienced what I can only call the dark night of the soul, the lowest point that often leads to our ascension. One day, my mom literally dragged me out of bed and took me to a yoga class that started with a few minutes of meditation. It was the first time in my life that I ever felt somewhat in control of my thoughts. I spent the next 7 years studying the roots of my pain from this life and karmically across generations, under the guidance of my spiritual teacher who helped me and who is still helping me find myself again. And my yearning for wanting to help prevent such unnecessary suffering in others began. 2 years ago, I knew I needed a big change, but I didn't know what it looked like. Naturally, I asked for a sign. One day, while working with preschoolers, I asked a little girl what her mom did for work. She said she helps people find houses who don't have any. She then looked me dead in the eye and said, "You could have that job too, but first you need to go back to school." I smiled and said, "Are you a sign?" And she said, "Yeah." And so I listened. It was one of my professors at the California Institute of Integral Studies who forwarded me an email telling me about this fellowship opportunity. And being here for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm in exactly the right place at exactly the right time with exactly the right people. And can already say that this experience has been one of the best and most transformative in my career and my life. I've always known what I was passionate about, and what this program is helping me do is find the words, support, and direction for what to do with that passion. And in many ways, I feel like my work is just beginning. Like Aloe, I want to help people find their light, though I think my role has to do more with helping them clear out the junk in the way. lifetimes of baggage covering up who we truly are, that we unknowingly but pervasively pass along generation to generation, individually or collectively, and wonder why history keeps repeating itself. What could be possible in terms of interrupting traumatic repetition, individually and collectively, Stephanie Mines asked. And this is the same question that leads me to my why, the very why that Aloe encouraged us to build everything else around. In his own sharing, Aloe started by saying, "Here are my stories, keep the lessons," reminding us of the power of storytelling in this work. His stories were tales of great courage, but despite all the things he had endured, Aloe seemed unwilling to be defined by what happened to him. An extraordinary and deeply spiritual practice for in taking accountability for our lives, we're choosing to heal. When I got out of my abusive relationship and realized what had happened to me, I was furious. But as Lisa once mentioned, rage and grief can be foundational. I needed to be angry. Up until then, I was manipulated into believing I deserved it. Up until then, with generations of patriarchal cellular memory backing up my belief, I was taught to be a good, self-sacrificing, and enduring girl. So, with a clenched fist raised and a megaphone in my hand, I raged. And that was both necessary and healing for me and my sisters who had also been silenced and who were finding their deep primal scream from within. But my true healing, that came with the deep spiritual work, where in facing my own shadows, I came to learn that the parts of me that felt not good enough and unworthy were the parts of myself attracting stories to manifest that very belief. And I wish I had learned that earlier. But Aloe encouraged us to not only not be defined by the trauma that we've experienced and to take accountability for our healing, but to embrace the challenges we face as opportunities for our soul's evolution. The things I've learned have mostly come from my challenges, he said. And in order to learn from them, there's a certain way to respond. So maybe it's less about alleviating the suffering necessary for our soul's evolution. Maybe it's about eliminating man-made suffering and offering tools to the next generation to be able to face the rest. Because if triggers show us where we still need to heal, and we teach children how to notice them, name them, and transform them psychologically, somatically, and spiritually, first learning ourselves, then maybe such a drastic dark night of the soul wouldn't be necessary to wake us up. Maybe we'd already be there. And the best way to change the world is to change ourselves, Aloe said, embodying a beautiful example of what that looks like. And that's the perspective Robin Grill brought in too. Our cell memory colors the lens of what we think we see, he said. So when I look at you, I only see part of you. The rest is a projection of me. So I recently took this workshop series on how trauma affects our relationships. And much like Robin's work, the idea was basically that when we're triggered, we resort back to the age where we were when we experienced the childhood wound we're still carrying. If in conflict, both parties are coming from this place, then nothing gets resolved. If, however, even one person is able to step into their true selves, that is the childhood essence before the wound, that's where the true transformation can happen, pointing again to just how important the self-work is. The inner child exercise Robin took us on had us looking at our own needs and committing to basically reparenting ourselves to heal whatever wound it was that revealed itself. I found the experience helpful, and not only have I leaned on this process to uncover more, since I'm presenting at the International Leadership Conference this year, and I'm considering utilizing this experience, or at least discussing my takeaways. In fact, I found myself quoting and sharing so much of the wisdom that I've gained here and from each of you and all the presenters. When I asked Teresa what advice she might give to someone preparing for parenthood, she said, amongst other things, to let go of the expectation of being perfect, that parenting is not about getting it right every single time, but about repairing it when we don't. I've been integrating this practice with the children in my life, including within my relationships and my own inner child, and have found it absolutely liberating. Learning from Teresa completely transformed how I've been working with children. I thought I was progressive, radical even, but clearly there's so much left for me to learn. Take George, for instance. He's 3, at school for the very first time, and is just learning how to listen to his body in terms of when and where to go to the bathroom. For a while, I was asked George if he wanted to go to the bathroom now or in 5 minutes, thinking I was giving him choice and not realizing the extent of my manipulation. After being inspired by Teresa's work, I started asking him if he needed to go and trusting his answer, honoring his full autonomy over his body, something I preach and did not realize I was not practicing authentically. And guess what? His accidents stopped. Right now, I'm also working with refugee children through the International Rescue Committee. And the other day, a little boy was groaning at the idea of doing an assigned literacy packet. The packet went letter by letter and was asking the children to trace each letter about 10 times or so. He was bored and he was struggling. Knowing that his self-worth was more important than writing a letter perfectly could ever be, together we came up with the alternative idea of writing 1 or 2 letters on each page. Not only was he done in no time, but I had never before seen such a smile on his face. He then started pretending he was the teacher, holding up letters for the other children to name. It was an important moment for him, and it was an important moment for me. And it wouldn't have happened if that week I hadn't heard Pam Leo talk. Everything important I've done in my life, I've done because I can read, she said. Now, working with the IRC, we make sure refugee families get the basic necessities they need upon arrival. Are books a part of this equation? I started to wonder. I immediately told my mom about our session, as I do. And she, being a natural book fairy, put signs up around the neighborhood asking for donations. And within a week, we had over 200 books to give to these refugee children. Darsha Narvaez knows what it's like to have an international upbringing and spoke of the culture shock she experienced when returning to the States. Why are there 100 cereals in the aisle when there are kids that can't even eat dinner, she would ask. I remember when I came back to the States after living in rural Africa, I stood in the grocery store and I cried. My overwhelm came from how many salad dressings there were. It was a blinding depiction of the world's inequalities. And so part of the work that I need to continue doing is advocating for those children in the world who are dying unnecessarily from totally preventable causes. And we can't have this conversation without them. Because only when children have their basic needs met will they be able to reach their full potential, as seen here on Maslow's famous hierarchy of needs. We need the foundation in order to reach the peak of our potential. As spiritual beings having a human experience, we're meant for so much more than where we are. And that's what Darsha's evolved nest is highlighting. The evolved nest, she said, is what our species requires to meet the basic needs that our youngsters have. And to meet them so that the child is reaching their potential and can find their certainty, their self-confidence, and their own deep sense of belonging. Everyone is unique, she continued. We each have our different perspective, a different manifestation of spirit. So we are, in a way, responsible to guide ourselves to open up and to let that blossom, and to listen to those around us who are encouraging that blossoming, to find a community of people that will support your gifts. Thank you for being those people. I don't know why I was so surprised that I felt profoundly connected to each presenter during this process. If synchronicities we experience are proof of our quantum entanglement, then surely none of this is by coincidence. And with Stephanie Mines, they kept coming. Among so many other similarities, my work also started with helping women heal from sexual trauma. And now it's all starting to connect. If the intervention for trauma prevention can start as early as in utero, then surely our preconception state of being has an impact. Hence the need to do our own healing work. For as Pam Leo said, what we heal, we don't pass on. As a survivor of sexual violence and as someone yearning to be a mom, this feels like a perfect example of the micro reflecting the macro and the outer transformation starting from within. For not wanting to pass on my trauma cellularly, or otherwise has been so much the source of my motivation for healing. I also loved and don't think I've ever heard someone talk about pregnancy and labor the way Stephanie did, that they were highlights of her life and times of enormous health, adding that pain would not be the dominant word she used to describe it, but ecstatic rather. Such perspective brought me to tears and had me thinking about what we in the modern world have deemed as inevitable pain. I've mentioned this to you guys before, but for example, my spiritual teacher recently offered that if an umbilical cord is cut without conscious love or deep attention, that seemingly small act can be so shocking to the child's nervous system that they could spend the rest of their lives trying to energetically cord into others, looking for the same sense of safety they had with their mom. I tried to find empirical evidence to support this and so many other esoteric claims I wish I had time to go into today, connecting the spiritual to the psychosocial. But I couldn't find much, and this had me thinking that maybe I'm meant to conduct and write about such research. Because from a systems view, if the energetic components are left out of the conversation around healing, and in general, I think they are, then it's no wonder that we're recycling our trauma, repeating history again and again, whether it be in our own lives, in our family systems, or in the world. And this is where amplifying Indigenous wisdom comes in. Desmond Tutu said, there comes a point where we need to stop just pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in. So the question I want to explore is, what if we don't have to spend our lives trying to heal from what happened to us? What if our end goal was our starting point? Who could we become as humanity then? There's no simple answer and there's no simple method. Next, I'm going to share my preliminary attempt at a systems map, exploring the intersections and entry points of where I see my role in this movement. Each aspect pertains to first embodiment and then to teaching, both in children, those who work with children, and the systems themselves. And somewhere in here is where my work lies. I care about parent education, childhood empowerment, combating socialization, preventing internalized oppression, trauma healing and preventative tools, meditation and emotional regulation, karmic and ancestral healing, early childhood development, transgenerational trauma, access to equal resources, and so on. And all through Indigenous wisdom that will lead us to the transformation we need for true liberation. So what will I do with it? Well, I want to inspire freedom. I want to nurture, protect, and learn from children's innate connection to higher consciousness, teaching others to do the same as we continue to heal and evolve our own. I want to write. I want to be involved with Kindred in any way that you'll have me. I have a final capstone project for my master's degree coming up next semester and would love ideas on how to connect it to this work and what you've built here. I also have dreams of traveling the world, studying and sharing how Indigenous cultures birth and parent. After that, I hope to continue on and get my PhD so that I can continue this work in a deeper way. So while the what is clear, the how is still unfolding, and I'm genuinely looking for some intuitive guidance from the lighthouses that have paved the way so far. For I had no idea that there was already a community of people who cared so much about the same things, where these ideas could safely land. Raish once said, what we're trying to do here is progressive. This is the revolution. So to close, and I'll check in with you guys if you still want to hear the story I was going to read, I just want to thank Reshma, Dave, and Lisa for your incredible and unmatchable support and guidance. And I want to thank each of you, Lisa, Reshma, Dave, Alo, Robin, Teresa, Pam, Stephanie, Darsha, Cambria, and Kendall, for the incredible work that you've done and continue to do to usher in the new world. I feel so honored to be on this journey with you. Can I close with a little story? You guys open to that? Good. It's one of my favorites, and you might know it. It's called What Do You Do with an Idea? One day, I had an idea. Where did it come from? Why is it here? I wondered. What do you do with an idea? At first, I didn't think much of it. It seemed kind of strange and fragile. I didn't know what to do with it, so I just walked away from it. I acted like it didn't belong to me. But it followed me. I worried what others would think. What would people say about my idea? I kept it to myself. I hid it away and I didn't talk about it. I tried to act like everything was the same as it was before my idea showed up. But there was something magical about my idea. I had to admit, I felt better and happier when it was around. It wanted food, it wanted to play. Actually, it wanted a lot of attention. It grew bigger and we became friends. I showed it to other people, even though I was afraid of what they would say. I was afraid that if people saw it, they would laugh at it. I was afraid that they would think I was silly. And many of them did. They said it was no good. They said it was too weird. They said it was a waste of time and it would never become anything. And at first I believed them. I actually thought about giving up on my idea. I almost listened to them. But then I realized, what do they really know? This is my idea, I thought. No one knows it like I do. And it's okay if it's different and weird and maybe a little crazy. I decided to protect it, to care for it. I fed it good food, I worked with it, I played with it, but most of all, I gave it my attention. My idea grew and grew, and so did my love for it. I built it a new house, one with an open roof where it could look up at the stars, a place where it had a safe place to dream. I liked being with my idea. It made me feel more alive, like I could do anything. It encouraged me to think big and then to think bigger. It shared its secrets with me. It showed me how to walk on my hands because it said, it's good to have the ability to see things differently. I couldn't imagine my life without it. Then one day, something amazing happened. My idea changed right before my eyes. It spread its wings, took flight, and it burst into the sky. I don't know how to describe it, but it went from being here to being everywhere. It wasn't just a part of me anymore. It was a part of everything. And then I realized what you do with an idea. You change the world. Thank you, everybody.